My dad is a cop. Obviously, he always tried to downplay the danger of situations to my sister and me so he wouldn't scare us. But one morning, he came home shaken. I was a teenager at the time, so I asked him to tell me what happened. This was a while ago, so some of the details might be off, but the general idea is there. He and his partner were doing a graveyard shift, and there was a seemingly abandoned car on the side of the road. They go out to see if anyone was in it, and my dad was first while his partner stayed in the car to call in the radio report. I'm not too sure how this next part happened, but as he was approaching the car, he realized there were multiple people hiding in the car. All of them were super strung out. As he's going to back away to wait for his partner, he hears his partner running over. He identifies himself as police to the people in the car and asks if there was any weapons in the car and things like that. His partner comes around and they start getting people out of the car and they see a gun. Okay, kind of a biggie. His partner goes to start talking to the people in the car to see whose it was, etc. In that time, one of the people had gotten away from the group. My dad was talking to the driver near the front of the car and his partner was talking to a few other towards the back. The person my dad was questioning, eyes went wide and he kind of backed up. He turned around to see why, and a man had a handgun pointed to the back of his head. He's a cop, so obviously he's had guns pointed to him before, but never that close. Thankfully, he is a beast and he started talking to him to calm him down. While he was doing that, he put his hands up slowly towards his face in the I surrender position, and the second the guy took his finger off the trigger, he stuck his finger behind the trigger, called over his partner, and they handcuffed him. Obviously, it's terrifying that if the driver hadn't widened his eyes, he would have never known, but I'm thankful every day that he acted quickly. I rather like having him around. My uncle was a patrolman in a huge city for 45 years. His worst call went something like this. Nice day, nice area of the city. My uncle was working on a tactical team of officers assigned to his division. Around midday, they get a call. A man living on the 4th floor of an apartment building noticed a group of children no older than 9 climbing on his car in the parking lot below. Not in any kind of malicious way, just playing. The man, who was blasted drunk, goes and gets his .22 rifle from his closet, opens the window of his bedroom, and starts plinking shots off at the kids who jump behind the car for cover. Panicked neighbors flooded the operator with calls of a man with a gun. My uncle and his partner were the first of many officers to arrive, and the man is still shooting out of the window. They call a 10-1 over the radio, and officers need help. His partner pulls their shotgun out of the trunk, and they move in through a back entrance of the apartment complex. My uncle drew his .357 Colt Trooper from his holster, and they quickly cleared the stairwell until they got to the 4th floor. They arrive at the apartment and call out, "City police!" and within a few moments, they kicked the door in. The suspect was so drunk that he didn't even hear the officers make entry. They moved to the sound of the shots from the bedroom as the suspect empties magazine after magazine into his own car and the pavement around it. My uncle's partner goes in first, shotgun at ready. My uncle comes in behind him, crouched low behind a dresser. At this point, more officers are on the scene and are streaming into the apartment behind them, revolvers and shotguns drawn. His partner shouts to the suspect at the window, "City police, drop the rifle!" The suspect turns around and looks at them. And the next part is the part my uncle remembers best. The man stares at both of them and says with a heavy southern drawl, "You're both gonna die today." He pauses for a moment and then raises the rifle to the face of the officers. My uncle's partner blows a single round off from his 12 gauge and nails the guy in the chest. And my uncle squeezes off a round from his .38 and hits him in the lower right abdomen simultaneously. The man goes down, gets cuffed, and was pronounced DOA at the hospital. None of the children that were playing on his car were hurt, and all the officers went home okay. Another thing to point out was that this was during the mid-1970s and things were different back then. My first night out of the academy after graduation was a Friday, and I was scheduled to have the night off, returning for work on Monday. Of course, a friend of mine who had gone through the previous academy called me and said, "Hey, Xanderin, come ride with me." Of course, I wouldn't get paid, but it was still worth it because I just graduated. The whole night was dull, just checking buildings, a couple of traffic stops, and driving the roads of Georgia. At about 2 a.m., I was ready to call it quits, and he turned around and headed back to the town to drop me off. On the way, we saw a broken down Buick Century with a male and female outside of it looking lost. We stopped and checked on them, and found out that they had run out of gas within eyesight of a gas station. Since the Century was on top of the interstate overpass, there was a slight hill leading down to the gas station. We decided that we would push the car to the edge of the hill and then they would stop and jump in. We would then give them one last good push where hopefully they would just coast in the gas station. Since the Buick had a cheap hollow plastic bumper, my partner decided that we couldn't easily just use the patrol car's push bumper to actually push the car, as it might break or crack the cheap bumper. So he volunteered me to push while he followed in the patrol car running blue lights so no one would smack into us. Everything was going fine, and the three of us were pushing to the edge with little problem. Me in the back, while the male pushed from the driver's side door and the female on the passenger side. When we reached the edge of the hill, I called for him to stop and get in. Instead of getting in, he started running, pushing harder and faster. Then suddenly, as the car begins to get up to good speed, he hops in. The female, being larger and much heavier, attempts the same but slips. I am so stunned watching her hold on for her dear life, one hand on the passenger door and the other on the roof of the car. She is being dragged down the road, and I'm just so out of it that I was still pushing. Once I came to, I stopped yelling for him to stop. I have no idea to this day how he couldn't see her right next to him barely holding on. He never attempts to stop the car, he just lets it roll. Right as the car is almost at the bottom of the hill, it's going about 40 or 50 miles per hour. Right as I think she can hold on to the gas station, she just looks up into the car and she gives up and lets go. The back tires catches both of her legs right at the knees. I could hear the crack. I literally put my hands on my ears at that sound. We call an ambulance and our sergeant shows up. He speaks to the driver and then my partner and I are sweating bullets. I knew it was over. I had spent almost 2 years working in the jail in order to earn the rights to go to the academy, and it's all over in 1 second. Worst of all, I wasn't getting paid. The sergeant walks over and I'm just ready to take my duty belt off, hand it to him and just go home. He just laughed, patted me on the shoulder, and then said it wasn't my fault, it was a male driver who should have stopped. I have been to worse calls since then, but nothing beats that. I was so scared that everything I just worked for was over because I had just pushed a car on top of a woman. I laugh about it now, but at the moment all I could think about was how I was going to be sued and unemployed. Okay, I am a police officer and my scariest moment wasn't a fight, collision, or anything like that. Here it goes. 3 a.m. I got called to a suicidal female in her low-income apartment. Me and my partner find the unit and I knock on the door. It creaks, slowly opening, showing pitch black from the inside. I identify myself. Ma'am, it's the police. We're coming in. No response, but I can see the shadows bouncing from a candle-lit bedroom towards the back. I step in the doorway and see the woman sitting on the edge of her bed. She has a regular-sized torso, but her arms and legs are really tiny, like a baby's. She is wearing filthy stained pajamas and her tiny legs are kicking rapidly. She is whispering and shaking her head back and forth. I notice a few candles on the bedside table, which is stacked full of Virgin Mary figurines. The walls are covered with rough sketches of crosses, upside down ones. Ma'am, this is the police. That's when I notice the noose hanging in the closet, swaying slightly. Her wrinkled face snaps towards me.
You can't help me. The devil has me.
Yeah, I wasn't so worried about falling asleep for the rest of that night shift. I called my partner over. He took one look in the room and said, "Fuck this," and went to let the paramedics in. The lady is still staring at me. Her head is tilting back and forth, kind of like when you confuse a dog, but less hilarious and more terrifying. I say, "Ma'am, we're here to help you. The paramedics are on their way up." She whispers, "Do you believe in God?" The apartment is deathly quiet when I whisper back, "No, ma'am." She nods and says, "That's good." I question her, "Were you going to kill yourself tonight, ma'am?" And she says, "I've been dead for years. Tonight, I was going to end the pain." She slides off the bed and onto the floor. She kind of does a push-up type pose on her tiny deformed limbs, still staring into my soul. The bed is covered in reddish brown stains, one covering another, covering another. She bats something that is under the bed toward her and pulls out a small glass bottle. It says holy water on the side. She flips the top up, rolls onto her back, and starts splashing this fucking liquid all over her, and she goes back to kicking her feet repeatedly.
Save me! Save me! Save me!
She's shouting at the top of her lungs. The paramedics come into the room, and I'm slowly backing out, resting my hand in the grip of my SIG P226.
Save me! Save me! Save me!
Again and again. The medics try to lift her to put her on the gurney, but she lashes out, scratching the arms of the medics, drawing blood. They had to wrap her in the sheet and secure her with the seatbelt straps on the bed. The paramedic told me later that she screamed the whole way to the mental health wing, "Save me!" I was the last one to leave the apartment. I blew out the candles and made sure the stove was off. I had one foot out the door, but I quickly ran back in her room, grabbed the little bottle, splashed some holy water on my hatch gloves, and got the fuck out of there.